Good morning. Thank you all for being here. Tomorrow is Election Day. That is incredibly important in any democratic society, but it could not be more important in the city of Philadelphia, in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, in the year 2022. We are all here to say one thing, which is that your votes will be protected. Your votes are going to be protected now, Election Day, as they are counted, and every election worker in the city of Philadelphia is going to be protected. This will be a free, fair, and final election. It is my pleasure to introduce to you the speakers who will be coming up. We have Mayor Jim Kenney, Police Commissioner Danielle Outlaw, City Commissioners Lisa Deely and Omar Sabir, Al Schmidt of the Committee of 70, and Assistant District Attorneys Brian Collins and Tom Gaeta of the DAO Election Task Force. With us as well is Dominic Mireles, who is the Director of the Office of Emergency Management, although he will not be speaking today. There's a couple numbers you need to know. First one is 911. If there's any activity around the polls or around drop boxes that may pose a threat of danger, any activity that appears to be in the nature of intimidation, anything of that sort, call 911. And then call 215-686-9641, which is the DAO's Election Task Force. That number is going to be active and answered from noon today on. It will not just be answered during Election Day, it will be answered until the votes are counted. Now, we know that will take several days, and we know that for some pretty good reasons. Like the legislature decided that we're not allowed to start counting votes until Election Day. They could have done something else, but that is what they did. So we already know that it's going to take days to count the enormous number of paper ballots. You should also call 866-OUR-VOTE, V-O-T-E, which is a national number that is monitoring inappropriate election activity during and after Election Day. I will have a few comments later, but let me just leave with this. For anyone who is thinking of trying to erase Philadelphia's votes or prevent Philadelphia's votes or intimidate people at the polls or do things to election workers, I invite you to a sentencing that is happening in Philadelphia later this month. It is the sentencing of two men, one named Macias, one named LaMotta, who thought it made sense when votes were being counted at the convention center to come up here with guns. Think again. They will be sentenced for their felonies for which they were convicted on December the 14th. We invite you to attend that. We do not invite you to intimidate our voters or frighten our election workers in any way. Anybody who thinks this is a time for crime, anybody who thinks the way to deal with votes is with bullets and guns, well, we got handcuffs for you, we got jail cells for you, and we got a Philadelphia jury, and you can tell them why you thought it was okay to erase their votes. And you can end up just like Macias and LaMotta. This will be a free, a fair, and a final election for every voter, no matter what party and no matter what candidate. It is my pleasure at this time to introduce Mayor Jim Kenney.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for District Attorney Krasner for gathering us here to stress the importance of voting, the rights of voters, and the safety of election workers ahead of tomorrow's election. Also want to acknowledge the City Commissioners, Police Commissioner Outlaw, the Philadelphia Police Department, election workers, and volunteers who have been working diligently to ensure a smooth election tomorrow. Tomorrow's election really comes down to some very simple concepts: fairness, integrity, and accuracy. Fairness to choose how you vote and who you vote for, regardless of your political affiliation or party. Integrity to ensure that the foundational component of political freedom, the administration of free and fair elections, remains strong. And accuracy to ensure that every vote is counted correctly. None of these are achievable, however, if there are people out on the streets and near polling centers who are intimidating or interfering with Philadelphians' right to vote. Interfering in the election or intimidating voters is illegal and something we take very seriously. The city is working closely with the DA's office and state and federal partners to ensure everyone, no matter their party or beliefs, feels safe casting their ballot tomorrow. We're here today to assure Philadelphians that voters will be able to access their polling places and vote. No one will be permitted to unlawfully interfere with their right to vote, and all ballots properly cast will be counted. Also joining us today is Police Commissioner Danielle Outlaw, who you will hear from momentarily on PPD's plan for tomorrow. And I want to make it clear to anyone thinking of messing with the election process in our city that they will be held accountable. But we need the public's help. If you see or experience someone loitering in polling places or at drop boxes trying to hinder or delay the election process, threatening or harassing poll workers, tampering with or destroying ballots or voting machines, please report these incidents by calling the District Attorney's Office Election Task Force at 215-686-9641. That's 215-686-9641. I'd also like to reinforce something we talked a lot about in 2020. After the polls closed and in the ensuing days, we asked for everyone's patience. With tens of thousands of people voting by mail, it will take some time to count all the ballots. And remember, by law, staffers are not allowed to start opening and counting these ballots until Election Day is over. So again, please be patient as we count all our votes. And before I go, I know this is a very, as you make final plans for Election Day tomorrow, remember, if you are visiting a polling location, as long as you're in line by the time the polls close at 8 p.m., you will be able to vote. Mail-in ballots can also be placed in the designated drop boxes across the city until 8 p.m. tomorrow. And of course, please be patient. The people working your voting station are waiting with you are your neighbors. They are doing their absolute best. And on that note, I want to take a moment to thank all the workers and volunteers that make our elections run smoothly, from the poll workers to translators to election administrators. With your help, we are confident that just like the 2020 election, our city will shine as an example of how to run an election correctly. So thank you for being here, and I'd like to now introduce Commissioner Outlaw.
Good morning. Thank you, Mary Kinney, and good morning again to everyone. Before I get started on the election, I know that's not why we're here today. I just want to remind the public that we continue to vigorously investigate Saturday night's tragic mass casualty shooting incident in our Kensington community. Along with our law enforcement partners, we're chasing down each and every lead that we have, and we've bolstered our resources in the affected area. If you have any information on this or any other crime, we ask that you reach out to our tip line by calling or texting 215-686-TIPS, 215-686-8477. As you can see behind me, I have also with me Deputies Dale and Venor here with me to answer any questions after this. But we're going to make sure that we are available for any questions specifically about that incident after this. Turning back to tomorrow, I will keep my remarks brief because there are a lot of folks here that have important information to share with you. I want to make it known that the Philadelphia Police Department stands ready to assist our fellow stakeholders in ensuring a safe and fair election experience for voters and poll workers tomorrow. To that end, we're working very closely with the city commissioners, the managing director's office, and others to ensure that all lines of communications are open before, during, and after Election Day. Maintaining open lines of communication, including sharing of intelligence, for example, is a key to election preparedness. For the PPD, that means coordinating closely with the DIVIC, which is the Delaware Valley Intelligence Center, the District Attorney's Election Task Force, the State Police, the FBI, and other federal partners that are also gathering security data so that we can be ready in advance of any potential efforts to disrupt an orderly and safe election. The PPD is a member of the DA's Election Day Task Force, and our command staff will remain in direct communication with that task force tomorrow. All of our patrol districts will be having roving teams of police officers specifically assigned to quickly respond to calls for assistance at polling locations. And these officers will be wearing body-worn cameras and will also be joined by a police department supervisor when they're responding. Of course, we have worked to ensure that we have ample resources available during and after Election Day. As always, public safety remains our #1 priority of the city of Philadelphia, and we're looking forward to joining the community in a safe and free Election Day tomorrow. So thanks again for having me, and now I'm going to turn it over to our city commissioners.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for being here. We recognize the need for this press conference, and we appreciate DA Krasner for once again hosting it and gathering you all here to talk about any issues that may arise tomorrow for Election Day. But I would just like to remind the Philadelphia voters that tomorrow, Election Day, is a beautiful day. It's a day of community and civic engagement and participation. And there's people that you'll find at your polling place that are looking up your name and assisting you to the voting system. They're your neighbors. Sometimes they're your relatives. They might even be you. We are very appreciative to all of our thousands of poll workers who stand up on Election Day to provide democracy for the citizens of Philadelphia. I would like to take this time to remind everybody that if there's any issue inside the polling place, you want to call us at 215-686-VOTE, V-O-T-E, and we will be on standby to take any calls for any issues related to any issues inside the polling place. Has been said here previously, any issues where you feel as though there's a risk of safety or something of that nature, always call 911. We also, in light of the recent Supreme Court decision, it is important for me to reiterate how extremely disappointed I am that the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, with regard to undated and incorrect dated ballots, has made this choice. Handwritten dates are not material, and lack of such a date should not be a reason to just enfranchise a voter. Nevertheless, our staff will be segregating ballots in accordance with the Pennsylvania Supreme Court's order and the Department of State's guidance. Anyone who finds their name on the list of voters that we have advertised on vote.phila.gov, if your name is on that list as being a voter who was potentially affected by the Supreme Court's recent decision with regard to undated ballots, please come to room 140, City Hall. We are there today until 5 p.m., and we will be there tomorrow, Election Day, from 7 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. For those who have a mail ballot and have yet to return it, please do so. We have 18 24/7 drop boxes throughout the city. We are waiting for you to get your ballot back to us. We just ask that you take an extra minute to make sure that you follow the instructions properly and you have signed and dated your ballot. I know tomorrow's going to be a great day for Philadelphians. I always say that Philadelphia should be right up there. Philadelphia Election Day should be right up there with Rocky and Tasty Cakes. I grew up at the polls my whole life on Election Day. It's a great day. I'm sure with all of our help and the help of these partners behind me, we're going to have a great day tomorrow. Most importantly, polls open at 7 a.m. They close at 8 p.m. If you're in line at 8 p.m., you still have the right to vote. Take advantage of it. This is our democracy. Your vote is your voice. Thank you. I will now call on my colleague, Commissioner Sabir.
Good afternoon. Hello, Philadelphia. We are calling on every eligible Philadelphian to vote. There's so much sacrifice that went into the vote. Just a little over 150 years ago, Octavius Cotto was assassinated on Election Day so that all Philadelphians can have access to vote. And now, here we are in 2022, we are making the same call. The call to stand up for democracy. We are calling on Philadelphians to still become poll workers. We are calling on everyone to vote, and we are calling on you to spread the word, to be ambassadors about democracy. Now is the time, and our time is now. Philadelphia is the birthplace of democracy, and I'll be damned if democracy dies on my watch. It is safe for everyone to vote. It is safe for everyone to be poll workers. It is safe for everyone to count up the votes. You have my personal insurance. Pretty sure you had a commissioner's insurance. We cannot let lying thugs to intimidate our voters and try to upset democracy. Now is our time, and our time is now. Remember, Philadelphia, the more we vote, the more we get. I'm going to call up my colleague who really doesn't need any introduction, former colleague, Commissioner Al Schmidt, CEO of Committee of 70.
It is just as important that our voters be safe as that they feel safe on Election Day in casting their votes. And the City of Philadelphia has clearly made this a priority and dedicated resources to it to make sure that our voters can vote with confidence and not be concerned about disruptions on Election Day. If they should occur, I know you've all heard what you should do as a result. I'd ask our voters in the hours and days ahead to be patient as every voter's vote is counted. And I'd also call on campaigns to be responsible with their rhetoric. That rhetoric has real consequences. Consequences resulting in election board workers and election officials receiving threats, consequences in voters being afraid to cast their votes. There's a lot of noise out there, and really it'd be better if people tune out that noise and just focus on exercising their right to vote and not let any campaigns or any rhetoric get in the way of that. I also want to introduce next Assistant District Attorneys Brian Collins and Tom Gaeta of the Election Task Force.
Good morning. A couple of things that I want to reiterate that the DA said earlier, and a couple of important pieces of information to pass along. First is that as of noon today, our Election Task Force hotline will be up and running and answered. That phone number again is 215-686-9641. That number will remain active while the vote is being counted, which we anticipate will continue after Election Day. We obviously, if you see anything that is a threat to safety or a threat of violence, please call 911. But we also want you to contact our Election Task Force hotline if you see anything that you believe is an incident that requires our attention. Most importantly, the things to take note of are that there's a law that prohibits solicitation or electioneering inside of the poll place within 10 feet of the polling location. What that means is that nobody can come inside to the polling location and advocate for a specific candidate. One of the things that we often get where there's some confusion, that means the actual room where the polling is happening. Doesn't mean the door to the building. So the actual room where the polling is happening, no one can be within 10 feet of that, and electioneering, that includes signs, things of that nature. Uniformed law enforcement personnel are also to remain 100 feet away from a polling location unless invited inside by a judge of elections to keep the peace. That's an important exception. Know that if there's an incident happening inside, law enforcement is able to respond to that if necessary. In addition to that, for our election task force, we'll have 50 or more assistant district attorneys and detectives with our office ready to respond to incidents. That's going to include mobile units where we'll be going out to polling locations as necessary to observe any incidents that are happening and respond to them. Another thing that I wanted to emphasize before I wrap up and bring the DA back up here, we are in regular coordination with our law enforcement partners, as the Commissioner already mentioned earlier. We are regularly communicating with Philadelphia Police Department, the FBI, the Pennsylvania Attorney General's Office, the State Police. All of these various agencies are working together to ensure that the process tomorrow, today, and the count goes smoothly, fairly, safely. That's the most important thing to all of us up here, and so we've been staying in regular contact to make sure that that happens, and we're going to continue to do so over the next couple days. And I'm invite the DA back up.
Thank you to all the speakers. I just have a couple more comments. Obviously, we find ourselves very close to Veterans Day. We should remember that tomorrow. We should be voting for our veterans. I know that many of our veterans will be voting. These are people who volunteered after Pearl Harbor, like my dad, who fought for our rights, who fought for the rights of others overseas. It is not enough. It's not enough to say, I don't feel like voting. You owe this. to everybody who fought and everybody who died and everybody who went over there and didn't come back whole. You owe it to them. Get out there and vote. And you also owe it to your children, and you owe it to your grandchildren, because the vote that you put down tomorrow, even if you're not excited to do it for yourself, that vote will profoundly affect their lives in every way possible. So please, get out there to vote. Understand that I, like so many people behind me, will be working a 16 or more hour day tomorrow. We'll be out there in the field. We'll be checking in with people, making sure that they understand it is 100% safe and that we have your backs. And we're going to make sure that your votes are counted, no matter who is your candidate or what is your party. We're going to make sure that the election workers are completely safe. There is no place for fear in a free, fair, and final election. We're not going to have fear out there. And everybody up here is going to do everything they possibly can to make sure tomorrow is as peaceful as it should be. Are there any questions on the topic of this press conference? Yes, please.
Is your office aware of any complaints or threats at this point ahead of Election Day?
Well, I can tell you that many of our justice partners up here have been in meetings that have included federal authorities where there have been more specific discussions. Just because you do not see the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office out here does not mean they are uninterested. In fact, they are deeply engaged, as they always are. There are very, very significant preparations underway, and there are ongoing threat assessments. No, we don't give them out at this point. But obviously, we view, at any point post-January 6th, you have to view an election as being a time when there should be a heightened level of security and attention. And I can tell you, I'm confident that our federal partners, as well as all of the partners you see out here, have laid the groundwork. Let me say that. Yes, please.
En español brevemente, ¿qué tan importante es la seguridad para las elecciones mañana?
Estamos aquí juntos, los policías, además de la oficina del fiscal, el alcalde y los otros que están aquí para asegurar a la gente que vamos a proteger sus votos, vamos a proteger a la gente que trabaja en la elección. Es lo más importante que podemos hacer mañana y esperamos que todo el mundo vote. All right. Are there any other questions on this topic? Yes, sir, Mr. Petrillo.
Have there been any credible threats for this election, and then were there any violations that happened in the last election or previous elections?
What I will say on the credible threats is that we are not in a position to disclose any such information at this time. In terms of what happened at the last election, I'm going to invite anyone here who would like to speak, but I think that Mr. Collins could probably speak from the DA's perspective on that. And if anyone else would like to step up, please just come up behind Mr. Collins.
So I'm going to use the 2020 election as a framework, since I think that's the one that's most comparable. We received a number of complaints, a number of reports during that election cycle that we investigated, reviewed. There was nothing that rose to the level of chargeable conduct, excepting the two men, Mr. Macias and Mr. LaMotta, that the DA talked about earlier. So we had a number of things that we looked at. There was nothing from that election that rose to the level of this is a chargeable case.
And they were never convicted of anything election-related?
They were convicted of illegal gun possession. Right.
So nothing that had to do with the election?
There was no conviction on an election charge. It was the illegal gun possession during the canvass. Yes.
Okay. It was a felony conviction for having guns right next to where the votes were being counted. Sir, that's what it was. Are there any other questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, with this task force, you just going to be randomly going out to precincts or what?
So in general, what the task force does is we field phone calls within the DAO. Ordinarily, the immediate primary intervention would come from PPD or from other authorities, but we do respond to individual situations where it is appropriate. In general, what we've seen over the years is you get a lot of calls about things that are technical. You know, is that sign within X feet of the polling place? Is someone standing a little bit too close? Some of that is flat out misinformation. And frankly, a lot of the stuff that circulated on social media was just a lie. It was a photograph of a poster that was in a proper place with a false allegation about what its location was, things of that sort. So we respond, and we respond immediately where it's appropriate. But that doesn't mean we're just walking around at polling places. Now, I will be out in the community. I expect to be pretty much all day tomorrow. A lot of that, frankly, is just to thank people who are doing the work out there, to make sure that they understand that we are all together in protecting them. But as I think the police commissioner has said, and I don't know if you want to say more, there will be PPD personnel who are close to polling places continuously throughout the voting period. Yes?
Just want to clarify something. The pre-canvassing of mail-in ballots can start at 7 a.m. tomorrow. Mayor, I think you said can't begin opening until after.
7 a.m. tomorrow. Let us remember, it is this legislature that decided we couldn't do what other states are doing, which is start to open them early. So when you start to hear all this nonsense about all the votes should be counted tomorrow, and that nonsense is coming from the same people who didn't want to allow those votes to be counted early, I'll let you draw your own conclusions. Are there any other questions on the subject matter of this press conference? Yes, please.
This is for Commissioner Outlaw.
Okay.
Commissioner Outlaw, can you speak to increased police presence, what your department will be doing to make sure that law enforcement is visible and lets people know that they are safe to vote?
Sure. The question is, what will PPD be doing to increase visibility and let people know that they're safe and that they can vote safely, right? So just not to rehash what I said, obviously we will increase our presence in the areas where there are polling places. But again, to be very clear, we're doing that within the law. So again, there's rules, right? We can't be within 100 feet unless we're called in. And then we also have to be very mindful, because we are armed, that we're not intimidating as well. So it's helpful to be a part of this task force, because not only are we increasing our visibility around polling places, but we also have those that we can call on hand when we do get flagged down, where there are complaints. If people do feel threatened, or if there is some form of intimidation, we have people in real time that we can either contact for legal advice, or when we do take someone into custody, we have somebody on the other end of the line to know if we're looking at this from the Commonwealth perspective, or if this is a federal charge that needs to be applied as well.
One last thing, you mentioned body cameras. Is that a first that your officers will be wearing body cameras as they
No, I don't think it's a first. I mean, obviously there are quite a few of our police officers that are equipped with body-worn camera footage, but again, it will be made very clear via clips and through very clear direction to our officers before they deploy, to ensure that body-worn cameras are activated when we are in contact with folks. And typically it might not be a type of contact where we would, by policy activate our body-worn cameras, but we'll make sure that we'll be doing it for these type of interactions. So, and I think the DA's office can talk to this more, right? So it's 100 feet unless we're called in, or obviously if there's a crime or if something going on, then we can be within the polling place. But we're making sure that we're maintaining that bubble by law.
So in other words, you're not going to be done any activity by any police officer that would be intimidating, or spear to any voter who exercises their constitutional rights. Is that correct?
So, Ralph, I think your question is, we won't tolerate behavior that's voter intimidation or those exercising their constitutional. Yes, that is correct.
Okay, well, I've got an incident to report, because last week in a forum just like this, two Philadelphia police officers who report to you at the order of the district attorney physically manhandled a victim of a court official press conference for asking a question. You condone that type of activity?
We'll be happy to look into that further for you, Ralph. Any other questions for me on this topic? No, thanks.
All right, thank you very much.